Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Glad you're here.
Yes, sir.
Yom Teruah was awesome. What a great celebration that was. And now we're moving into preparing for Yom Kippur. Are you ready for the word?
Yes, sir.
Turn to Leviticus 23. Thursday, on my way home, I stopped at the corner of Oakwood and Andrew Jackson to get some gas. I'd run my vehicle lower than I normally do. I like to keep it on full. It costs the same amount of money to keep it on full as it does to keep it on empty, but in all the activity I had going on Thursday, I did not. So I did not want to cross Chapman Mountain without gas, so I pulled over at Oakwood and Andrew Jackson. As I was filling up, a lady from Tennessee pulled up, rolled down her window and said, "Excuse me, are you from around here?" I said, "Well, I'm not from here, but I am from around here." And I said, "Can I help you?" And she said, "Well, I hope so." And she pulled out a piece of paper, and on the paper was an image that she had copied of Google Maps. She had left Tennessee trying to find a certain location. And she said to me, "I'm trying to get to there," and she pointed, "but somehow I ended up here, and I don't know how I got here. So can you help me get to there?" And she pointed again. I said, "I can." And I reached into my truck, and I pulled out my phone. I opened up Google Maps, and I said to her, "What's the address of the place that you're trying to find?" She said, 1505 Fales Avenue Northwest. So I entered that into the app, hit the blue directions button, and voila, pops right up. I turned my phone around to show it to her, and I said, "You're very close." She said, "Good." A few seconds before we began that conversation, I'd never even heard of Fale Avenue Northwest. I didn't even know that there was such a street in Huntsville, but because of Google Maps, with confidence, I said to her, "Lady, when you pull out of here, you're going to pull on that street right there. At that light, turn right. Immediately turn left." I said, "You can see that street right there from your car." I said, "You turn right, immediately turn left, follow that, count 3 streets. The third street you come to is going to be Fales Avenue. When you get to Fales Avenue, turn right on Fales Avenue, and your address is going to be on the left." I don't know how far down through there on the left, but your address that you're looking for is on the left. She thanked me and drove away. Well, Google Maps is an amazing tool. I use it almost every day. It gets me where I need to be, and it tells me when I will get there. I enter the address, it gives me an image of where I am, and it gives me some options on how to get to where I want to go. I tap the blue directions button, and the route gets chosen, and it begins to direct me on my pathway. Go east on 72. It tells me to go east on 72, I just do what it tells me to do. And then sometimes I go on about my business. I might turn the radio on and listen to Paul Feinbaum rant about something, or Rush Limbaugh. I might just be driving down the road and get lost in my own thoughts, minding my own business kind of a thing. I might be driving down the road, scanning the fields on either side of the road, seeing if I can spot a deer in the edge of the fields and coming out of the woods. It's okay. Because then Google Maps I get communication from Google Maps. In a quarter of a mile, turn left on Maysville Road. Thank you. Keep going. In 500 feet, turn left on Maysville Road. Turn left on Maysville Road. Okay, I got it. I'm turning left. You understand? That's what it does.
Right.
And I'm very appreciative of it. Did you know that Yahweh's feast, Yahweh's MOEDIM, are designed for the same purpose as that? They get us where we're supposed to be and they tell us when we're supposed to be there.
Right.
Because of them, we know where we're supposed to be, we know what we're supposed to be doing, and we know when we're supposed to be doing it. When Yahweh put this creation, His creation, in place, He established a roadmap for us that would get us from where we are to the end of the age. Right. Every generation has had that. As soon as He established His creation, He put a roadmap in it. He put directions in it. And I don't care what generation you lived in, whether it was this one or ones before us or ones after us, there is direction on how to get from where we are to the end of the age. Genesis chapter 1. I know you're in Leviticus, but let's read this one too. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 says this, "And Elohim said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." There's the map. Signs, seasons, days, years. What's a sign? That Hebrew word for sign means a flag, a beacon, a signal. Let these lights that I'm going to put in the heavens be for flags, beacons, signals. The word translated seasons there is the word moed. And the word moed, anybody know what word moed means? An appointed time. So it refers to an appointment, a fixed time. So Yahweh established in time beacons and signals so that we could count the days and count the years. Why did He want us to count the days and count the years? Because there are turns coming up. In a quarter of a mile, turn left. There are turns that will come up because there are appointments that you and I absolutely cannot miss. They are vital to us. We cannot miss them. There are fixed times that we have to know about so that we can get to where we're supposed to be when we are supposed to be there. From the beginning, Yahweh established these and set them in place. Isaiah chapter 46 verse 10 says, Yahweh actually said this about Himself. He said, "I am He who declares the end from the beginning, and from ancient times," He said, He declares the things not yet done. That's who He is. He declares the end from the beginning. So you can go and look in the beginning. He's declaring to us the end, and He's telling us how to get there. We are barreling full speed ahead toward the end of the age. We've never been there before. But that's okay. Yahweh has set signs, beacons, flags, signals in place to make sure that we arrive safely where we're supposed to be at the appointed time that He has established. The MOEDIM are Yahweh's communication to us so that we don't get distracted or lose our way along the way. The MOEDIM work like Google Maps. They will give us a map to follow. They give us specific written out directions to follow. And as we go, there is communication that is given to us from Yahweh about the journey. There is only one way to be ready for the end of the age. And that is to be familiar with Yahweh's MOEDIM. I'm going to say that again because that's going to ruffle some feathers. Maybe not yours, but it's going to ruffle some feathers. There is only one way to be ready for the end of the age. And that is to understand and be familiar with Yahweh's MOEDIM. The foolish man will hear that and he will say, "I don't need to know about those old Jewish feasts. I've been saved. My Savior will get me to the end of the age." But that's foolish. And it's foolish because, number one, these are not Jewish feasts. They are Yahweh's appointed times. Number two, Yahweh established them in the beginning to guide us to the end. Right. Number three, Every one of them are shadows of, what does Colossians 2 say they're shadows of? Shadows of things to come. And it says the body is Messiah. So how the Messiah gets us to the end of the age is revealed to us by and through the MOEDIM. If you don't know about the MOEDIM, you do not know how he, the Messiah, is going to get us to the end of the age. Right. This became very apparent to me, I think it was about 2 years ago. As I was preparing for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, I was reading Leviticus 23, and I read these words. Are you there at Leviticus 23? Here's what I read in Leviticus 23, verse 27. Also on the 10th day of this 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you. You shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. I began reading right there because I wanted to study Yom Kippur, and I wanted to understand the depths of its meaning. But as I read those words 2 years ago, verse 27 just grabbed me. Those words seemed to pierce my very being, and understanding began to come as I read them. Listen to the words that begin that verse again. Also on the 10th day of this 7th month. Also on the 10th day of this 7th month. Those words literally just grabbed me as I read them. Because I know that Yahweh doesn't choose days and months randomly. He didn't just close his eyes and point at a time on the calendar and said, well, let's do that this day. He chose the 10th day of the 7th month to be Yom Kippur, and he did it on purpose, and he did it for a purpose. And as I contemplated that, then I realized that every MOEDIM is that way. Right. He chose precise times for every one of them, and he chose precise times on purpose for a purpose. He chose specific days and specific months on purpose. Why? Why would he do that? Because by choosing the days and designating the days and the months, he wanted to reveal things to us if we would pay attention to the detail. You know, several years ago we were studying the parables of Matthew 13. And we saw that Messiah taught in parables for two reasons. By using parables to talk to large crowds, he said he was able to accomplish two things at the same time. Do you remember what those two things were? Been a long time ago, I know. He could reveal things. By using parables, he said, I can reveal things to you because it's given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. But what else did he say he could do with parables? He could conceal things. The disciples said, why are you teaching in parables? He said, because unto them it's not given to know. I can speak parables and they hear a silly story. I can use parables and you hear deep truth. I can reveal things and I can conceal things, all with the use of these parables. Well, that is exactly what the MOEDIM do. They reveal important information to Yahweh's people, but yet to the majority of people who read them, they seem confusing and silly and something that Jewish people used to do. They seem to have no significance or importance whatsoever to the majority of people. But to those who are grafted into Israel, to those who know their Elohim, these MOEDIM reveal deep, spiritual, vital information. Every MOEDIM is revelation to us. Every MOEDIM is a map and direction and communication to us meant to get us to the end of the age. Because of that, it's very important for us to pay attention to every minute detail of the MOEDIM, even details such as this. it will be held on the 10th day of the 7th month. That detail is specific instruction that Yahweh is using to give us information that we need, that will get us where we're supposed to be and get us there when we're supposed to be there. On the 10th day, he said, on the 10th day. He didn't say, now y'all need to make sure that at some time every year you get together and do this. Y'all just choose a day that works best for y'all. Maybe the third Saturday of every month or third Saturday of some month. No, that's not what he said, is it? No, he was very specific on the 10th day of the 7th month. When we see how important specific instructions are, it becomes apparent why Satan has worked overtime to confuse the calendar. Yeah. When you set your heart to learn, keep, and do the MOEDIM, the first hurdle you got to get over is how confusing the calendars are. Because Yahweh established the calendar. There's about umpteen different opinions on how to interpret that calendar. And then you've got to try to make it mesh with the Gregorian calendar that we follow today. And it can get challenging. I almost said frustrating, but frustrating is not a good word. It can get challenging to sort through it all and figure out where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there. Whether we know how important the MOEDIM are and the specific instructions are, whether we know it or not, Satan knows. Oh, yeah. And he doesn't want us to pay attention to the details that we're given. So the months are no longer called the first month, the second month, the third month, the 7th month. Instead, they're called by names that refer to pagan deities. Right. And new months are no longer restricted to beginning with each new moon, like Yahweh instructed that each month is to begin with each new moon. All of this is by demonic design to keep the masses from knowing how, listen to me, every bit of the confusing of the calendar is by design by devils to keep the masses from knowing how to arrive at the end of the age safely. Here's what I mean. Let's go to Leviticus 23 again and see what's revealed. Go to the first part of Leviticus 23 and tell me this. What is the first appointed time mentioned in Leviticus 23? Sabbath. The Sabbath. Very good. Impressive. The Sabbath is the first one mentioned. And Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, verse 2, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yahweh. Whose feast? Yahweh's feast. Concerning the feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocation, even these are my moeds, my appointed times, my feast. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yahweh in all your dwellings. So before he ever starts talking about the 7 MOEDIM that we like to mention, he mentions the 7th day Sabbath. The importance of the seventh day Sabbath cannot be overstated when understanding how these things work to get us to the end of the age. Yahweh reminded Moses of how important it is several times before Moses came down off the mountain. Not only is the significance of it etched in stone, Yahweh etched it in stone with his own finger. You shall remember the 7th day and keep it holy. Not only did he do that, but the Sabbath is the one commandment that Yahweh continued to re-emphasize to Moses up on the mountain. Let's turn there. Turn there for just a minute. Exodus 31. As you turn there, keep in mind that Moshe has been on the mountain for 40 days with Yahweh. The 10 commandments have been written in stone, and then Yahweh went over many verbal instructions with Moses. He began to talk to Moses about how to live righteously. He began to talk to Moses about the sacrifices. He began to talk to Moses about constructing the tabernacle and how it's to be built and all the furnishings that are supposed to be inside of it. He began to talk to Aaron about him and his sons and all of their priestly duties. He even talked to Moses about the priestly garments that they were to wear. Moshe has been up there for such a long time that the people thought Moses had surely died up on that mountain. That's how long they'd been up there. He was there for 40 days, and Yahweh was going over a lot of information with him. But if you read from Exodus 20 to Exodus 31, you will see that the one thing that Yahweh emphasized and re-emphasized to Moshe was the Sabbath. Chapter 31, verse 12, and Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak thou also to the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths you shall keep. It is a sign, flag, beacon, signal. It is an evidence of our relationship. It is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahweh that does sanctify you. It's already been written in stone. Moses is about to leave. This is the last thing Yahweh saying to him. Verse 14, You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. So when men say every day's holy, who's right?
Yahweh.
Every man or Yahweh? Yahweh's right. They're declaring Yahweh to be wrong. Yahweh says this day is holy. Everyone that defiles it shall surely be put to death, for whosoever does any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy to Yahweh. Whosoever does any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore, he's not through. Wouldn't that be enough? He's already etched it in stone, already said that. Wouldn't that be enough? He's not through. Verse 16, Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. How long does a perpetual covenant last? Forever. It is a sign, there he goes again, between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth. On the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. And he gave unto Moshe, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of Elohim, Yahweh. So it's the last thing he said to Moshe before he allowed him to leave the mountain. Yeah. And he went on and on and on about it. Yeah. You know, we do the same thing. If we're giving a lot of instruction to someone, and in all of that instruction, it's all important, but there's something we really want to make sure that they understand it's vital, we might say it at the front, tell them everything else has got to be done, but before we dismiss them, we'll say, now don't forget. Right. Make sure. Right. And it's the last thing we tell them because it's vital. Well, Yahweh went over a lot of stuff with Moshe, but the last thing he said to him was to remind him about the importance of the Sabbath. The vital importance of the Sabbath cannot be overstated. It is a sign. It is Yahweh's weekly reminder. I want to make sure we hear that. It is his weekly reminder that we're moving in the right direction. It's a reminder that there is a divine cycle set in place and we are to follow it. It's a revelation that Yahweh has established the heavens and the earth, and that he has set in place divine patterns that we are to learn and know and pay heed to. The seventh day is a weekly beacon, or it's a signal that calls upon us to stop everything we're doing and to remind ourselves that the earth is not ours, the earth is not man's. It's not ours to do with as we please. Yahweh created it in 6 days. It belongs to him. The earth and the fullness thereof are mine, he says. Yes. It didn't just evolve out of nothing. It didn't come into being because of some big bang. It was created, and the seventh day is a testimony that Yahweh did it in 6. Yeah. The seventh day reminds us that he who created it all has a plan and a purpose, and that he knew the end from the beginning. So the first appointed time is what? Sabbath. It is our first revelation from Yahweh that there is a divine pattern. Get this now. Let it sink in. The first revelation that we get from Yahweh that there is a divine pattern set in time is the seventh day Sabbath. Think about that for a minute. Why don't weeks last 10 days? Why are there even weeks? Why don't we just count days? Why do we start recounting the days after the seventh day? Why do we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Why don't we count 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 30,822, 30,823? Why don't we count days that way? You know, people do that with other things. You could Google it right now and say, when is the last time Tennessee beat Alabama in football? And there's a counter up there. 3,990 days ago. I looked it up today. The last time Tennessee beat Alabama in football, 3,990 days. The days are being counted. But when it comes to time, we don't just count days, we count the days up to 7 and then we start all over. We count the months. How do we know when there is a new month? Yahweh gives us a signal. He gives us a new moon. A new month is starting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. There's a cycle. Right. Are you with me? Yahweh got that cycle that it reminds us. He created it all, and he's got a divine pattern taking place. And then we see the moon, and it gets large, and then it diminishes, and it disappears, and then it reappears. He says that's a new month for you. Yeah. So he's got a pattern. He's got a sign. He's got a signal for us to follow. The point being this, there is a divine cycle revealed to us by the Sabbath. Keep that in mind, and then notice that there are 7 other MOEDIM besides the Sabbath. Why not 5? Why not 6? Why not 9? It's connecting us back to that cycle. You got the 7th day Sabbath, and then you got 7 other MOEDIM. He's showing us, revealing to us, a cycle. When does the first Moed take place? Besides the 7th day Sabbath, when does the first Moed take place? In the first month. 14th day, somebody said. The first month. What month does Passover take place? That's the first one. Is in the first month. We'll keep that in mind. The first Moed takes place in the first month. When do the last 3 MOEDIM take place? The first 3 take place in the first month. When do the last 3 take place? In the 7th month. Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot all take place in the 7th month. Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits all take place in the first month. Well, just as the Sabbath reveals to us a divine cycle and divine pattern, so do these MOEDIM. The Sabbath reveals to us that creation was brought to completion on the 6th day, and there was rest on the 7th day. In the exact same way, the MOEDIM reveal to us that time or the age shall be brought to a completion. And we will rest at a time in the future that will be signified by the 7th month. The 7th month is signifying to us a rest after the age has come to completion. Creation came to a completion after 6 days. The 7th month reveals to us that all of time will come to a completion after that 6th month. It is a pattern that is being revealed to us. There will be an end to the age. The last 3 MOEDIM being placed specifically by Yahweh in the 7th month, is a reminder, a revelation, if you will, to us that everything will not continue as it always has been. That's the reason he doesn't put it in the 8th month, the 9th month, the 10th month. He could have put it in any month. Right. But he signified the 7th month to us to let us know that no matter how it may look, things will not continue as they are forever. May look like it will. People have become callous about the end of the age. They have heard so many false proclamations about the end of the age coming. Oh, surely the blood moon signaled that this is the end of the age. Stars lining up on September the 23rd of 2017. Today is supposed to be the end of the age. Did you know that? It's all over the internet. Stars lining up and star in the belly of some constellation. And I'm not saying it doesn't have significance. I'm simply saying that people have been bombarded. The end of the age is coming. Not long ago, the world was going to end because of Y2K. Right. I mean, people went to storing up everything because of Y2K. There have been hundreds and hundreds of false warnings about the end of time. And because of that, people have grown calloused in their hearts, and many no longer have any concern about it. Many have said in their heart that the end will not come. Peter addressed this issue. Why don't you go to 2 Peter 3 and let's see what he said about it. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 3 says this, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lust and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. Sounds like the scoffers are inside the fellowship, doesn't it? Inside and outside, the scoffers are saying, where is the promise of his coming? All things continue as they were. Well, today people have that mindset. All things continue as they were. The MOEDIM, you and I would fall into that trap if it weren't for the MOEDIM. The MOEDIM are Yahweh's revelation to us that the end of the age will come. It will not continue as it always has. If we pay attention to the details he gives to us in every MOEDIM, we see that he is revealing to us when the end will come so that we can be ready. When was Messiah crucified? 14th of the first month. When was he resurrected? On the 16th day of the first month. When did Pentecost come? When was the Holy Spirit? When did the Holy Spirit, the gift of the Holy Spirit, when was that given? When the day of Pentecost was fully come. Those first 4 feasts happened precisely. Are you with me? It happened precisely when those first 4 MOEDIM told us they would happen. Not almost on those days. Not close to those days. Not, well, man, that's quite a parallel. No, exactly when those first 4 MOEDIM told us that those things would take place, those things took place exactly on that day. We would be foolish to think that if the last 3 are telling us about the end of the age, it would be foolish to think that it will not happen exactly when these 3 MOEDIM tell us it's going to happen. Right. Yahweh used the number 7 to reveal to us that the end is coming. When he uses the number 7, he is revealing to us knowledge that he wants us to have. He communicated the number 7 because the number 7 refers to completion. Every week He has us to rest on the seventh day. Why does he want us to rest on the seventh day? Because you're really, really tired? Some of you may be. Some of you may not be. Why does he want us to rest on the seventh day? Because he said so. But what does he say? Because heaven and earth were created in 6. He wants us to know that the seventh day signifies a completion. Everything was completed and we rest on the seventh day. Therefore, it's not a coincidence that Yahweh places the last 3 feasts in the 7th month. He could have chosen any month, as I said, but he chose the 7th. Why? Because he wants to reveal and to conceal. He wants to make things known while at the same time hiding things. Some will know. To you it is given to know. To them it is not given to know. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
It's not a coincidence that the world works to have the month called by some other name than the 7th month. Just as the world does not want to acknowledge the 7th day, it does not want to acknowledge the 7th month. Why? Because the 7th month reveals that things as we know them will come to an end. There will be a completion of time. There will be an end of time. There will be an end of the age. It is coming. And this 7th month reveals that. Men would like to believe that it's not coming. Men hope that it's not, but it's coming. I shared this with, I think it was about a year ago, that I saw this post on Facebook. Here's what it said. I don't know who the author is. All I can tell you is what the post said. It was a meme. And it said, time doesn't exist. Clocks exist. Time is just an agreed upon construct. We have taken distance, which is one rotation of the earth and one orbit of the sun, and we've divided it up into segments and then given those segments labels. While it has its uses, we have been programmed to live our lives by this construct as if it were real. We have confused our shared construct with something that is tangible, and thus we have become its slave. People were reading that meme and thinking that it was so deep and so wise and so beautiful and saying, wow, that is awesome. Well, I read it and realized, no, that's not deep at all. It's actually absurd. And if it's deep, the only way it's deep is it's deeply stupid. Time doesn't exist. How can people read that and think that that's true? Time does exist. Whoever wrote that, let me see if I can do that an octave lower. Whoever wrote that, and whoever thinks it's correct, never read Genesis chapter 1. Time exists, it is real. The sun, the moon, the stars were put in place for the very purpose of being signs, MOEDIM, days and years that make time very real, and we need to make sure we pay attention to every detail concerning time, because there are appointed times that we absolutely cannot miss. Right. Yeah. Without those appointed times, we'd never know who the Messiah even was. The 7th day reminds us that all of creation was completed in 6 days, and the 7th month reminds us that all of time will be completed too. There will be an end to this age. Let me see if I can show you what I mean when I say that the placing of Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot in the 7th month is a revelation, or if you even prefer, it's a warning to us to be ready. And it's telling us how to be ready for the end of time. We're told in Leviticus 23 that in the first month, on the 14th day of the first month is what? Passover. In the first month, on the 15th day of the first month is what? And the 16th day of the first month is what? First fruits. We understand the significance of these days. They were patterns or shadows that revealed to us exactly who the Messiah was, exactly when he would come, exactly what he would do. The 14th day of the first month is the day that Messiah was crucified and that we were redeemed. The 15th day of the first month is the day that he was in the tomb. Our sins were removed, and we are now to live without leaven or without sin. The 16th day of the first month is the day of his resurrection. Those days were and are very significant. And yet there's one more day associated with the first month that you don't hear very much about. It's a day that's very vital and that we're to remember. Great emphasis was put upon this day in the 12th chapter of Exodus. You remember what day that was? We're told about the 14th day, we're told about the 15th day, we're told about the 16th day. But there is a day before those that's mentioned and great emphasis is put upon it. What day is it? The 10th day of the first month. What happens on the 10th day of the first month? Exodus 12:3 says you bring the lamb into your home on the 10th day of the first month. The lamb will be sacrificed on the 14th day of the first month. Yahweh never chooses days and times at random. Right?
Right.
So why bring the lamb in on the 10th day? It has to have vital significance. Could the lamb being brought into the home on the 10th day be some kind of marker that will help us understand the end of the age? Let me ask it this way. When did Messiah make his triumphant entry into Jerusalem? You ask the majority of believers and they'd say, oh no, how are we supposed to know that? Right?
Right.
I didn't mean that to sound so mocking. I apologize. But I would have a few years ago myself.
Right.
When did Messiah, what day did he make his triumphant entry into Jerusalem? I'd have said, I don't know. I don't think there's any way we could know. But that's not so. It's not speculation. There is detailed information given to us in the Gospels that makes it plain that he made his triumphant entry into Jerusalem and walked into the house of Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh. He did that on the 10th day of the first month. Keep that in mind, and now skip ahead and let's talk about the 7th month. 7 means what? Completion. In the 7th month, we have 3 MOEDIM, or 3 appointed times. When is the first MOEDIM of the 7th month? First day, what's it called? Yom Teruah. When is the second one? The 10th day. And it's called what? Yom Kippur. 10 is also a very significant number in the Bible. The first month telling us to bring the lamb in on the 10th day. The Yom Kippur is telling us to be observed. We're told to observe Yom Kippur on the 10th day of the 7th month. 10 is a number in the Bible that refers to divine order. By using specific numbers in his instruction in specific ways, Yahweh is able to conceal things that he wants to conceal. But at the same time, he's also able to reveal things that he wants to reveal. Do you know how many times in Genesis 1 that it says, and Yahweh said, let there be light. And Yahweh said, on and on and on. You go. You know how many times it says, and Yahweh said? 10 times. How many plagues were in Egypt? 10 plagues in Egypt. How many commandments were etched in stone? 10. How much is a tithe? 10%. From Adam to Noah, do you know how many generations there were? 10 generations. Good. And then the earth was destroyed with a flood. From Noah to Abraham, do you know how many generations there were? 10 generations. Very good. And then Yahweh entered into a covenant with Abraham and all of his seed. 10 is the number for divine order. So it's very significant that the lamb was brought into the home on the 10th day. But it's also very significant that Yahushua made his triumphant entry into Jerusalem on the 10th day. And it is therefore very significant that Yom Kippur is on the 10th day of the 7th month. Because there is a pattern that's being established that Yahweh wants us to pay attention to. It's a sign, a flag, a beacon. According to Leviticus 23:23, on the first day there is to be a teruah. Leviticus 23:23 tells us on the first day of the 7th month, stop everything you're doing. Get together and let there be a memorial of shouting that goes forth. Stop what you're doing, gather together, shout. Why? Why stop? Why shout? Why get together on the first day of the 7th month? It's a divine pattern put in place by Yahweh to reveal to us that the end of the age is coming. The 7th month is a map showing us where the end of the age is. The 6th month is over. It is complete. The first day of the 7th month, which is the only moed that falls on the first day of any month. The first day of the 7th month is a signal to us that there is a cycle. Things will not continue as they are forever. Yahweh will intervene. He will bring time as we know it to a completion. So stop everything else you're doing, get together, have a memorial of shouting. A new age is on the horizon. That's what Yom Teruah is all about. A new age is on the horizon. And then on the 10th day, we're told about Yom Kippur. What does the number 10 signify? Divine order. So if the 7th month reveals to us that the age is coming to a close, what does the 10th day of the 7th month reveal to us? It reveals that time will cease as we know it. Yahweh will intervene. He will make all things right. Divine order will be set in place. On the 10th day is Yom Kippur. Here is what I think is significant about that. It is at least worthy of consideration. What happened on the 10th day of the first month? On the 10th day of the first month, what happened?
The lamb was brought into the house.
Lamb was brought into the house in Exodus. In Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, what happened on the 10th day of the first month? Say it with me, the triumphant entry. Say it again. Triumphant entry. On the 10th day of the first month, there was a triumphant entry of the Messiah into Jerusalem. What will happen on the 10th day of the 7th month? Is it not revealing to us that there will be a trumpet blast and another triumphant entry? Let's read Leviticus 25. You there? Verse 9. Then shall you cause the trumpet of the jubile. Let's talk about what that actually says in the Hebrew. What's the word for trumpet? Shofar. If I told you that the word jubilee is not there, but the word for shout is there, what word would you think that to be then? Teruah. So here's what it says. Then shall you cause the shofar teruah to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. Now if you read that, it goes on to talk about the 50th year. And it talks about every man being returned to his possession, every man being returned to his family, and every debt being canceled. That is a pattern. That's a shadow. The 10th day of the 7th month, the trumpet sounds, and every wrong is made right, and there is a new beginning. What day does that happen on? 10th day of 7th month. Now listen to this out of 1 Thessalonians 4. You can turn there if you like. We've been reading this the last few weeks. 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 15. For this we say unto you by the word of Yahweh, That is, this is the word, this is the pattern we see in the MOEDIM. This we say unto you by the word of Yahweh, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of Yahushua shall not prevent them which are asleep. For Yahushua himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of Yahweh, and the dead in the Messiah shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Master in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Master. That's our map. This is Yahweh communicating to us and letting us know to be ready. But he's not just letting us know to be ready, he's actually telling us when to be ready. Somebody will argue and say, well, none of us can know when he's coming or when time will end. None of us can know that day or that hour. But I want you to, as we close this morning, consider with me Luke chapter 12. And by close, I simply mean we've turned the corner. I don't mean it's just 2 minutes away, okay? You there, Luke 12? Verse 39, this is the Messiah speaking. He said, this I know, that if the goodman of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered or allowed his house to be broken through. Be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man comes at an hour when you think not. When he said that, that confused Peter. Peter had a hard time computing that. What do you mean, coming at an hour when we think not? Peter saw this as a parable and knew that it was to reveal something, but wasn't exactly sure what it was to reveal, and so he asked the Messiah to explain it. Verse 41. Peter said unto him, Master, speakest thou this parable unto us or even to all? Are you telling us, listen to me now, stop for a second, listen. Are you actually telling us that we won't know when you're coming? You speaking to us or are you speaking to everybody? Listen to what Messiah said. And Yeshua said, who then is that faithful servant and wise steward whom his master shall make ruler over his household to give them their portion of meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, shall find so doing. Of a truth I say unto you, that he will make him ruler over all that he has. But, and if that servant say in his heart, my master delays his coming, and shall begin to beat the men servants and maidens, and to eat and drink, and to be drunken, the master of that servant, if I say that servant, twice we've heard it, the master of that servant will come in a day when he looks not for him, and at an hour when he is not aware, and he will cut him in sunder, and will appoint his portion unto unbelievers. And that servant, which knew his master's will, and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. Who is that servant? Who is the servant that is caught unaware? It's the servant that quit looking. It's the servant that was no longer serving. He abandoned his post. Look in 1 Thessalonians 5 for just a moment. This is important or we wouldn't be going over. 1 Thessalonians 5. Verse 1, but of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of Yahweh. Anybody want to take a guess, or do you know what the day of Yahweh refers to? It's referred to oftentimes. In the King James it says day of the Lord, but it's the day of Yahweh. It's referring to Yom Kippur, which is a day of judgment. The great and terrible day of Yahweh, it's sometimes called. It's called the Day of Atonement. Listen to this. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of Yahweh comes as a thief in the night. Well, there it is. No man knows the day or the hour. Read the next verse. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. It's going to take them as a thief. But Messiah said, you walk in the light. It should not take you as a thief.
Right.
Why are we not in darkness? He said, brother, you're not in darkness. Why are we not in darkness? Because we've been given revelation. We have been given a map. We've been given inside information. We know that the 7th month signals for us the end of the age. We know that the 10th day signals the sound of a trumpet and judgment and atonement and all things being made right. Then on the 15th day of the 7th month, what happens? We know what happens on the 10th day. What happens on the 15th day of the 7th month? Sukkot happens on the 15th day of the 7th month. And just as there's a direct correlation between the 10th day of the 1st month and the 10th day of the 7th month, there is also a direct correlation between the 15th day of the 1st month and the 15th day of the 7th month. What happens on the 15th day of the 1st month? Unleavened bread. What does unleavened bread signify? Sinlessness. That's right. Removing sin out of our life. In unleavened bread on the 15th day of the 1st month, we learn to not transgress Yahweh's law. All leaven is put out, put away, and only unleavened bread, the truth of Yahweh's word, only that is consumed for 7 days. And in the 15th day of the 7th month, we see that the righteous are to live righteously so that they can tabernacle with Yahweh forever. Unleavened bread the 1st month, unleavened believers living with Yahweh forever. How long did unleavened bread last? 7 days. How long is Sukkot?
8 days.
7 days plus 1. I'm not manipulating numbers here. With 7 days, you restart the cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the way it goes on to the end of days. But Sukkot is 8 days. 1 through 7 and then 1 again this time. Why? New beginning. Everything changes this time. There is a new day coming. This time there's an 8th day. Sukkot is Yahweh reminding us that he will tabernacle among us, and that at the end of the age he will make all things right. There will be a new beginning in which there will be no end. The pattern revealing our redemption in the end of the age has been right in front of us the whole time. It is in all the MOEDIM of Yahweh. Just as sure as Messiah came into Jerusalem on the 10th day of the 1st month, he will come again at the end of the age. And that's patterned for us to be the 10th day of the 7th month. It's patterned to be the 10th day of the 7th month. He will cover us, make atonement, and make all things right. And then on the 15th day, Yahweh will tabernacle with us. Well, no wonder Satan works so hard to make sure that we don't know about the Shabbat. No wonder he works so hard to make sure we don't know about Shemitahs. No wonder he works so hard to make sure we don't know about Jubilees. No wonder he works so hard to make sure we don't know anything about the MOEDIM. They are our direction and instruction that gets us safely to the end of the age. That help us to know where we're supposed to be and help us to know when we're supposed to be there. It's not to overtake us as a thief. Right. Peter spoke of the end of the age. He even quoted Paul's writings about the end of the age. He sternly warned people to be ready for the end of the age. We saw what Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 5. Listen to what Peter said in 2 Peter 3. You therefore, beloved, seeing you know these things before, beware lest you also, being led away with the error of the wicked, fall from your steadfastness. But grow in grace and in the knowledge of our Master and Savior, Yeshua HaMashiach. To him be glory both now and forever. Amen. How do we prepare for the end of the age? Peter said you prepare for it by growing in knowledge of Yeshua HaMashiach. There is no clearer revelation of Yeshua given to us in Scripture than through the MOEDIM. He is the Lamb of Yahweh, Passover showed us. He takes away the sin of the world, unleavened bread shows us. He is the firstborn of the resurrection, first fruits reveals that to us. He went into the heavens, asked the Father to send the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. Pentecost reveals that to us. He is the one we look for in the Teruah shout. He is the one who makes atonement for us and covers us in the day of Yahweh's wrath on Yom Kippur. He is the one who makes ready the earth to receive the new Jerusalem that shall descend out of the heavens, that we might abide and dwell with Yahweh forever. Every time I look at the pattern, these patterns, I am reminded again and again and again about how people criticize us often and say that we don't talk about the Messiah enough. They say that we focus on those old Jewish feasts and not enough on the Messiah. How wrong they are. Every detail of the MOEDIM is a detail about Yeshua. You cannot talk about the MOEDIM without talking about him.
Right.
Anyone who does not know about the MOEDIM, the truth is they don't know the Messiah well enough to talk about him at all. We've never been to the end of the age, but we shouldn't be worried. We have a map that comes complete with written directions and communication to get us there. Last Tuesday night, we entered into the first day of the 7th month. The Sabbath that falls between Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur is called Shabbat Shuvah. That's what today is called. Shabbat Shuvah. Shabbat Shuvah means the Sabbath of return. Teshuvah means to repent. So it's kind of a play on words. Traditionally this day is called Shabbat Shuvah. It is a reminder to us that we're in those 10 days of awe, and that we are to repent and return to Yahweh, because on the 10th day is Yom Kippur. Could signal the end of the age. We should not be discouraged by the world's darkness. We should not be in darkness about the end of the age. These days, as I said earlier, are called the days of awe. We don't need to be discouraged. We should be in awe of what Yahweh has done and is about to do. We should not be caught unaware and should not come into Yom Kippur unprepared. I want to close. This time I am closing. This is the real one. Let me close by reminding us of the very specific instruction that we're given on how to be prepared and how to observe Yom Kippur. Leviticus 23, verse 26. Won't you turn there? Because we need to be, when we meet to observe Yom Kippur, we need to be prepared to do it. Leviticus 23, 26. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, also on the 10th day of the 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you. You shall afflict your souls. Mark that. So what's the first instruction that we're given? We're going to have a holy gathering, and then what's the next thing it says? Afflict your souls. Offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. Verse 28, you shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement to make atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted, in that same day he shall be cut off from among his people. And whatsoever soul it be that does any work in that same day the same soul will I destroy from among his people. You shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest. You shall afflict your souls in the 9th day of the month at evening. From even unto even shall you celebrate your Shabbat or Sabbath. So concerning this MOEDIM, we are told 3 times to afflict our souls.
Yes, sir.
We are told 5 times to not work. I've been saying it for years. If there's no other day you can mark on your calendar to not work, this is the most important. 5 times we're told to rest. 5 times we're told do no work. The 10th day of the 7th month begins for us Thursday night at sunset. As we move toward this divine appointment, then we have this instruction from Yahweh: afflict your soul, do no work. How do we afflict our soul?
Fasting.
Fasting is one way, but it's not the only way. Fasting is a vital part of it. We are to fast from sunset that day to sunset the next day. But the word afflict means to humble oneself and become a servant or a slave. We are to reposition ourselves before Yahweh as his faithful and grateful servants. You hear that?
Yeah.
We are to, remember how Paul said this, I buffet my body daily?
Yeah.
That would be afflicting. That from now until then, whatever we have to do to beat ourselves back into submission under Yahweh and Torah, we do it. Because there's a lot of things, come on now, there's a lot of things that Yahweh tells me to do that I don't get thrilled about doing.
Right.
And there's a lot of things he tells me not to do. I don't get thrilled about not being able to do those things.
Right.
Yom Kippur is telling us to get rid of that attitude. To take the old man that has that attitude and beat him into submission until he gets happy, grateful, and thankful to be Yahweh's servant. Till he enters into Yom Kippur saying, I'll do whatever you want me to do, and I'll do it gladly. I'll do it with joy. You are my Elohim that has made atonement for me. Whatever you ask me, I'll do it, Yahweh. That's what afflicting our soul means. And we're to do no work. I don't care what we think we have to do on the 10th day of that month. There's nothing we should do. Well, all of this is a revelation, a reminder, and a pattern. There's coming a day when Yahweh's wrath will be poured out upon the earth, but because we have humbled ourselves to be his servants, we have surrendered to the lordship of his Son, we will be protected in the great and terrible day of his wrath. We will rest. Safe. Remember us singing that? Didn't you sing it in your churches? Safe and secure from all alarms. We come in as his servants, protected on that day. Yahweh will not pour out his wrath upon us. Instead, we will be delivered and rescued. Yom Kippur is the pattern. It's part of a pattern that gets us to that day safely. We cannot afford to forget it. Stand up. Thursday night, 7 o'clock, Pleasant Grove Community Center. We will talk more about Yom Kippur. Lisa's with us. Alicia's with us. I saw Rita on here a few moments ago as well. I don't know who else. Oh, there's a lot of folks here. Cheryl Whaley. We're glad all of those folks joined us in preparing for Yom Kippur. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you. What two things? Afflict our souls and rest. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. As his name is put upon you, so shall he himself bless you. You're dismissed.